the international mentoring community, all things mentoring lounge. Wonderful to have you here. Dr. Stephen Hobbs here, one of the co-founders. Doug Lawrence, who is the other founding member, is not able to join us today. He is out and about doing the deep practice of mentoring. And so I wish him well today. And so I said that I would move forward and share something with you today. And what we're going to take a look at is the story approach for mentoring, and story being an acronym that we're going to take a look at today. And I'm going to be using my whiteboard as a way in which to share some of these thoughts with you. So the topic itself, I think, is timely considering everything that's going on in the world today. There's lots of noise out there, and what's a way in which we can find a way to bring some insights together through mentoring, that two-way trusted collaborative conversation that is formed through an alliance, this arrangement of working together, so that both the mentor and mentee can learn and develop together. And I would go so far as to say why not take a look at mentoring through a paraprofessional lens? Just like there are aides to teachers, and there are aides to lawyers, there are nursing practitioners who are of assistance to doctors. I think there's something to be said about looking at mentoring through this lens of paraprofessional. And I believe that you'll find that Doug and I are going to bring that out more and more to you and to see if it makes sense for you. But today, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the sense of the story approach. I'm not quite sure how long it's going to take me to go through some of this, but I'm going to be highlighting some words that I think would be of value to you, value in the sense that there is truth associated with them, there's worth in their use, and that they have use or utility to you. So we're going to be taking a look at this story lens for you, with you today. So I'm just going to set up the whiteboard here so that we can play with it and have some fun doing it. So to get us started, I just want to remind us of the notion of story. We hear a lot about it, and there's a lot that can unfold in storytelling, story sharing. And I want to give it its due thank you, if I will. There's E.M. Forster, who was an author, and he said something to the effect of a story, very, very short story, was the queen died, the king died. One could consider that a story, but he went a little farther, and this is what really got me thinking about the writing of stories and storytelling and story sharing. He then said, the queen died, the king died of a broken heart. Just adding a little bit more to that story just gave it a different light, a different feeling. It got me to picture something a little bit different than what I had if I was just listening to the first story. And that always struck me as being something that was really beautiful about this notion of storytelling and story sharing. So I'd like to offer to you the idea that storytelling often often is associated with managing, where story sharing is often associated with leading. And managing in the managing of systems for persons. So there's some storytelling that happens to be able to help groups of people, persons, to be able to use the systems that are available. Think workplace, think sports. But there's also story sharing, which is about sharing the practices for a person or persons so that they might understand what does it mean for them. Lead that person, this notion of fromward, forward. And I've always sort of made sure that when I'm doing storytelling, I'm thinking about the systems. And when I'm doing story sharing, I'm thinking about the practices. And it's been able to help me move along in terms of when I'm having this collaborative conversation through mentoring, I go, oh, right. Storytelling, story sharing, what is it that I need to bring to this collaborative conversation so that the mentee, upon asking questions or myself offering observations, suggestions, is it telling or is it sharing? And the story that goes with that, then does it hit the mark? Does it get to the closer to the bull's eye, so to speak? And sometimes it can happen immediately. Sometimes it might take a couple of sessions to get there. But either way, this notion of storytelling, story sharing is important for mentoring. And that's why I wanted to just unpack story in this case for this presentation of the Mentoring Lounge, just so that what we could do is just take a look at it from the sense of what does it mean. And I'm going to start with the S first. And what I'm going to offer to you is the idea that there is the notion of strategy. So there is a notion of strategy as you move in as a mentor into your mentoring connection, mentoring arrangement with the mentee. And sometimes that's given to you by the workplace and the people who are getting you together. Or it could be as because you got together from a more informal aspect, there's still a strategy. There's still a sense of we're looking at the why that needs to get answered. We're looking at how does this all fit into the whole picture. So there is this notion of why and whole that one is looking at. But there's also a couple of other ways to look at the S of story. And that's to think about it in terms of the setup, the sustain, and the scale. And this is just giving you a sense of the movement is that you have to set up, and stories can help you set up this mentor-mentee connection arrangement. And then it's as you've gotten past the setup, how do you sustain it? What are the conversations that you're going to have? And then getting to a point of scaling it. Now, when you're sort of getting to scale, something might happen where maybe it isn't so much a formal arrangement as it starts to become informal, more friendly. Again, these are things that you have to interact with your mentee around. So I'm going to basically talk to those of you who are mentors at the moment and share some ideas here with you. So this notion of the strategy, and then there's the setup, the sustain, the scale. And what becomes interesting here is what is the significance of this conversation? What's the significance of the talking, the significance of the sharing? And to be able to have you and the mentee understand the significance of it. That's what becomes important here. So with that, then there is the notion of the T aspect of this that we want to take a look at. And I just have to erase the board here to be able to set this up. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a new drawing. And so from that perspective, okay, we have the story. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the T of it now. And let's see what we come up with. The notion of the T that I'm thinking about is linking at the strategy is the sense of the tactics. What are the hows that you're going to look at as you're unfolding this story? Where the strategy might take a look at the why and the whole, The tactics are taking a look at the how and where. Did you get that? The how and the where. The tactics that you're going to use as you move forward in your work together. So what that brings out is that there might be something to do with how do you transact, the notion of transform, and take into consideration the transcend. Now, what's happening here is that the transact is really about working across this exchange of action. The transform is working across shifting the form of what it is you're looking at. And transcend, I think of it, the working across sending the mentee and you to somewhere different where you may not always know what might be the outcome that you're going to be looking at. So this notion of the tactics that you're going to be taking into consideration is this how and where to transact, transform, and transcend. And what you have to remember about this is you want to do this through the lens of working together. It doesn't make sense if you're just working with the mentee and you're not doing some of this tactical work yourself because of your interactions with that mentee. So the notion of the T of story unfolding here for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the element of the O now. So what we want to do here, okay, just better get my Y in there. The O here is to be able to give you a sense of some O-related words. And the main thing that connects strategy and tactics is the sense of operations. What is it that you're going to do, all right? What are you going to do when? That is what the operations aspect is about. Now, it's a little bit different use of the word what, because what here is referring to time, effort, and money. And therefore, the operations is the time, effort, and money that's associated when you're going to use them with the tactics to satisfy the strategy. But I'd also like to just offer to you is that there are opportunities that you can take a look at here, and the notion of optimism and the outside. Let me just expand on those a little bit. So with the opportunities aspect here, right, is that through the conversation that you're having and the sharing that's taking place, this collaborative conversation, and maybe there's times when you're telling something to the mentee may be telling you something, this collaborative conversation that's going on, opportunities are going to arise. Oh, I hadn't actually thought of it that way. Why don't we go explore that? And you might give to the mentee, why don't you explore that a little bit? So when we come back together, you can make a little presentation to me so that we can both explore it a little bit more. So these are the opportunities. This notion of the optimism, it sort of comes from the sense that, you know, I'm a mentor, a mentee, all right, there's meaning that's given to that, and that what we're looking at is through the sort of the lens of optimism is that by bringing those two elements together and through our conversations, I might see hope and faith and grace unfold in front of me because of our conversations. And that allows me to lean into being optimistic about what I'm going to learn I can actually put into action. So says the mentee and the mentor. So the optimism that goes on there. The other thing is that I lean into where can you do what you're doing, what you're learning outside. So this notion of maybe what you can do is turn your mentoring, this shared insights that you're doing, why not do it on a walk, sort of a nature-informed practice, a nature-informed operationalization of a tactic here. And I've always found that to be of great use is, and maybe it's because I have been nature-based, nature-informed for years and years, but you can pull metaphors and analogies out of a walk, looking at a tree, watching a bird fly by, a squirrel run by you, that you might be able to pull up some really interesting insights out of that. Now, the other thing that I would offer is, how is it that you can have everything being original? Well, that's possible. You have original ideas, mentee has original ideas, but I'd also get you to think about the notion of what shoulders of others can you stand on? They've had original ideas, so standing on the shoulders of giants, how might you bring some others' ideas, and especially those of the mentee, is working with the mentee's original ideas, insights, investigations, interpretations, that you would be able to, oh, okay, how might we grow this, or how might we build this? These are things to be thinking about as a mentor as you're moving forward in this notion of the story approach. So let's take a look at the next one. And what we're looking at here is we're looking at the R of it. And what we want to do is just open up this R a little bit more so we can figure out how the words starting with R are supporting this story approach that you are using as a mentee. And I would offer one of the key words is the notion of resilience. Resilience, in the sense that for both of you, is that if something arises that has a little bit of a grinding conflict to it, and the mentee is bringing to ask you some questions, or maybe there's something going on between the two of you, that the notion of resilience is an important concept here. And there was an earlier video about resilience that I certainly encourage you to look at in the playlists. But the notion of resilience is that entering into a conflict or crisis, there often is sort of a downward element of it, because you're sort of going, oh, okay, and you're going down in, but it's this notion of coming up to a level higher than when you went in. It's sort of, okay, oh, I see something. And you end up at a level higher than when you went into the conflict or the crisis. But I would also add here the importance of that you didn't go dysfunctional while you're in that, is that you are actually staying present. You're finding the gratitude of being there, the inspiration, the enthusiasm, the certainty that comes out of it, is that you don't go dysfunctional, because that's what can keep you in that pit, and that's not a pleasant place to be. And I think you know what I mean. So let me add a few more R words here, just so we can explore them. And what I would offer to you is reciprocity, the notion of resource, and the idea of relevance. So let me just clean up Resourence here and get that back in. It's an E-N, Resourence. Let me just go through what I'm referring to here. The reciprocity is that when you're in this conversation and you're sharing with one another, is that if you're asking a question, you would be looking for the mentee to respond. Well, guess what? When the mentee is asking a question, you are responding, but you're doing it through the lens of not noise, but news. Is that there's lots of noise out there, but a lot of people aren't sure what's the news. What is it that is the truth, the value, the utility? And that's where you as a mentor have to stay present in this notion of the reciprocity with the mentee, and then encourage the mentee to do the same with you. The other thing that I would have you think about is resourcence. And it's a bit of a play on the word resourcefulness. I tend to stay away from words that have full and less in them. And I sometimes I create my own word. I get that, and that can be a help or hindrance, and I appreciate that as well. But the resourcence here is this pulling together, okay, that conversation, was it of a resource to the mentee that they can go back and go, oh, okay, I think I see where that is. Well, when I come to the next conversation, I'm going to ask for a little bit more insights from you or ideas from you. And what it does is it sparks this resource conversation. And often what resource is doing is it's getting into the notion of the time, effort, and money aspect. How might I spend my time by learning from you, dear mentor, as a mentee, and vice versa? When how am I going to put my effort and energy into what it is that I'm learning? And does it cost money to do that? And if it does, how much? And that might be part of the conversation that you have with your mentor. So the resourcence of this notion of the mentoring and the shared conversation that you have. The relevance aspect here is of what it is that is taking place, of the conversations that we're having. Is it relevant to the circumstances I find myself in? Or are we off on some squirrel tangent? Now, sometimes they can be fun. I get that. But often, if you take off on these squirrel tangents, there's a little bit of a letdown that takes place. And you, as a mentor, if you can hold it, okay, is there a bit of a boundary that you're working with? But if you and the mentee decide, hey, listen, why don't we just explore this? Let's see what this takes us. And it may have started at a squirrel moment. It may actually end up being something that was wonderful, and you can both pull ideas from it. But again, staying within the notion of, is it relevant what I as a mentor is sharing, and is it relevant what the mentee is sharing back to me? The other thing that I would have you look at is the notion of the reliability. Reliability. Wow. The notion, is it reliable? Can you stand on it? Can you work with it? Or does it feel like it's a bit more like smoke and mirrors or fluffy wuffy? That's a great mentoring term, I know. But the conversation that you're having, the ideas that you're sharing as a mentor, the insights that you're sharing, the interpretations the mentee is pulling, is it reliable? Can you move forward with it? Or is it just sort of a little bit like more like quicksand? You just find yourself sinking in it. These are things to be thinking about as you're moving forward from an R perspective of the stories you're telling and sharing. So let's just take a look at the next one from a story point of view, and that is linking into the world of the why. Now, this one is a great one because you can probably appreciate the why here is why. Why are you doing it? And if you are doing it this way, and you're going to have something because of that why, does it make sense to both of you as you move forward with it? Because if it's not making sense, right, and you're not answering the question of why, then you better take another look at what's going on from an STOR perspective. So this why here is checking in, is that are we moving forward, answering the why for the mentee? And don't give up on it from a mentor point of view. Why am I mentoring? Oh, okay, so I can learn, or I can share with the mentee. The person's asked me, maybe the workplace has asked me. Again, being able to fulfill your own understanding of the why that's taking place. Now, I'm also going to give you some other ways to look at why, and I'm going to have a little bit of fun here. And the first one is the notion of yikes, and yes, no, and po, and Yahoo. So the idea here is, yikes, I hadn't thought of it that way. And if you can get the mentee to go, yikes, I haven't thought of it that way, it's sort of like a celebration that can take place between you. Is, yikes, I did not see that coming. that is interesting. Let's explore that a little bit more. So maybe you might go off a little bit of a squirrel. Hey, okay. But at the same time, it's awareness that just sort of comes to the foreground and you see that it might have value for you. The yes, no PO is often you're looking for, you want a yes response, but also the no might be of value. The mentee might pick up, well, no, I'm not going to do it that way. Thank you. I have another way of looking at it. And Edward de Bono, a writer about lateral thinking, offered another when he talked about PO, the white space between yes and no. A mentee may come, you may interpret and go, you know what? It may not be a full no right now, but it isn't necessarily a yes. So let's put it in the PO area of our thinking and sharing and talking. And let's explore it a little bit more and see if it is a yes or it's a no. And what it does is it just sort of frees up is that, oh, I don't have to put it in one place, I'll play one end of the stick or the other end of the stick. Oh, we could sort of play with it a little bit in the middle. And that's what we mean by yes, no, and PO. I'm putting Yahoo in here is because it's the nature of sort of a fun Yelp that people offer because of where I live. I live in the southern Alberta area of Canada. And sometimes we play with the word Yahoo because there's lots to do around with farming and cattle ranching and exhibitions that happen, something like the Calgary Stampede, and people yell Yahoo. And I put it in here just as a reminder to celebrate. Yahoo! we got to somewhere with the story, and we're understanding what's taking place, and that is wonderful. So again, there's the Yahoo. But I'd like to offer another one to you. It might go, what's going on here? The yurt. There's a yurt is a structure that you find in some parts of the world. It's a round structure you put on a roof and it becomes a house. It's actually an activity that I do when I'm doing my team development work. And it's a way in which to illustrate is that if you can support each other, because as one person leans in, someone leans out, and you do it in a circle, you can actually get to the point that you're leaning in, leaning back, and no one's falling over. And it just illustrates this way of interacting together. It's sort of like you can do that two-hand press, and two people have got their hands and they're pressing together. It's another one of those trust activities. Again, I leave that one with you. But it's a reminder that the story sharing is a way in which to bring ideas together in support of one another. And I'll also offer is sometimes the Yahoo may be because it's no. It's possible. Is you're going, yeah, no, we're not going to do it that way anymore. Hey, that's great. We both agree. And you can move on from that perspective. So I just wanted to give you a sense of those ways in which to look at this word called story. And I thought that it would be fun just to sort of break it down, use it as an acronym. And you might find other words you associate with S, T, O, R, and Y. And if you want to add them into the comments section below, that's wonderful. I love to see how it unfolds for people. But again, what I thought I'd do is just to remind you, okay, S could be strategy, setup, sustain, scale, and there's something of significance there for people. The tactics of transact, transform, transcend, and doing it together. The operations of opportunity, optimism, and using the outside to get original ideas coming up. Resilience from a reciprocity, resource, and relevance point of view, thinking about it, reliability. And the why being the why, the question why, the yikes, the yes, no, po, Yahoo, and the remembrance of the yurt and leaning in and working together as a mentor and mentee. So I'm hoping that this is sort of I would call this more of a fun way of looking at the word story and the story approach for mentoring. And in the days to come, Doug and I are going to be opening up more conversations with you. We may go back to a format that may not be live every time. We might do a mixture of live and some recording. We're just looking at that possibility because something is starting to unfold for us in the mental health area. I give celebration to Doug for his consideration, his writing of what it is he's doing and the wonderful work that he's doing about positioning mentoring, mentorship in the mental health field, and to be able to bring that story to the foreground more, and IMC being able to support that. But I would also offer to you is that from a nature-informed entrepreneur, nature-informed edupreneur, there's something to be said for mentoring and the out of doors and using the outside, nature-informed examples, metaphors, analogies that might be of value here. And I think of like forest walking, forest bathing, forest schools. There's lots of ways in which this notion of mentoring can fit into those situations as well. So we're going to be exploring some new opportunities, creating some courses that go around this, but we're also going to be taking a look at least once a month, having what Doug calls a mentoring circle, and we invite you to come to that, and that would take place at 10 a.m. on a Friday, and we'll certainly keep you up to date with what's possible there. And it's an opportunity to come and ask questions of Doug and I, or Doug or I, it depends who can make that. And it's really, the doors open up, and for the first 15 minutes, if no one shows up, then we'll close the doors to the circle. Unless you say, I won't be able to make it for a half an hour, then we will take that into consideration. But the mentoring circle, sometimes I call it the mentoring amoeba. Amoeba in Greek means to change. In other words, the circle, instead of it just being in a circle, that circle is actually moving. I call it an amoeba. And I think it sometimes fits more with what it is we're attempting to do. But we'll stick with mentoring circle, but when we get together, we might call it mentoring amoeba. We'll see. We'll see how that unfolds. So with that, again, I would encourage you to let us know what you think about what's taking place here. Is this information of value? Is there something that you would like to learn a little bit more about? And we can certainly bring it to you through the All Things Mentoring Lounge under the banner of the International Mentoring Community.com. So if you want to learn about certification and mentoring, again, internationalmentoringcommunity.com, and you can find that in the show more notes. There's the link there. And Doug will be joining us again next week. We'll go live next week, and that will bring us forward. I believe that would be the 22nd of June, 10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. You will find us here on our YouTube channel and on Facebook. So with that, I think that I've covered off what I wanted to cover today. Again, what we did is we took a look at the story approach for mentoring, and I'm hoping that these insights, these ideas will be tickle your fancy and have something that you can use as you go about doing your mentoring, being in service as a mentor, and as you expand your mentorship knowledge and skills. In other words, your concepts and practices, another way of saying that. And so with that, I'm just going to wish you the best, and we'll see you again next time.